You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and we have to head back to Alabama with a case update to the story that I brought you just 2 episodes ago about 22-year-old Wendy Bailey. She's the mother to missing 1.5-year-old Caleb Collins. She's also the girlfriend of 40-year-old Stephen Bradley Collins. And Stephen is the man who wrapped his black Toyota Tacoma around a tree while driving 92 miles per hour, killing himself and his 2.5-year-old daughter Riley and critically injuring Wendy. When I brought you the story, we knew that Wendy and Stephen had lost custody of Riley and Caleb earlier this year. Custody of the children was awarded to 55-year-old John Elton Bailey. Okay, that's Wendy's father. Weirdly, though, all of them, John, Wendy, Stephen, and the 2 kids, they were all living under the same roof. It doesn't make sense, and I don't have an explanation for you. Well, when Stephen erratically drove his truck off the road and into a tree on December 8th, some more strange things occurred. First off, no one, including Riley, the 2.5-year-old, well, none of them were wearing seatbelts. Also bizarre, there were no brake marks or skid marks at the scene. It appears that the truck just left the road without Stephen reacting or reducing the speed. Also bizarre, it wasn't until the next day when Wendy's family in Louisiana contacted police asking where the other child was. Little Caleb wasn't at the scene of the crash. He wasn't with Grandpa, who showed up, by the way, at the scene of the crash and didn't even mention anything about him. Instead, it's been reported that John was only concerned about getting Wendy's purse from the completely demolished truck. Now, when John was asked about Caleb the next day, he was uncooperative. And Wendy, well, she was at the hospital in Birmingham in a coma, so she wasn't answering questions. 4 days after the deadly crash, John was arrested for failure to report a missing child. He remains in Fayette County Jail on a $100,000 bond. Last week, that left us examining rumors about Caleb. Some people had reported that they last saw Caleb on September 4th of this year. Others said it was actually summertime when they last saw him. We also addressed rumors about Stephen's wife. Because, Stephen's still married to his first wife, Darla, even though he has 2 children with the much younger Wendy. Darla has some menacing comments on Stephen's old social media accounts. They're there, and I don't really make much of it. But it did really bother some of you, and I get it. When a child is missing, we all want that child to be returned safe, and we search for any possible reason why that child would be missing. So those comments are still out there, but Darla doesn't seem to be part of this update, because on Tuesday, we learned a bunch more about this case, starting with the arrest of Wendy. She was finally well enough to be released from the hospital and transferred to Fayette County Jail. With the arrest, court documents became available, and here is what we learned about the theory that investigators have developed. They believe that Caleb is dead. They do not have a body, yet they presume that, quote, after Caleb died, his body was placed in a bag and stored in an outside storage building for a brief period, then sent to a final disposal at an unknown location. Well, the court documents go on to explain that Wendy witnessed aggravated child abuse of Caleb in July of this year at least 2 times, and investigators contend that she did not intervene or report the abuse. And investigators are saying they have evidence. On one instance, it's alleged that Wendy received a text message from Stephen saying that he was going to kill Caleb. That message was allegedly followed up with pictures. Okay, I've got to warn you, what I'm going to say next is very, very tragic and graphic. That text message allegedly followed up by pictures of Caleb hanging from a loft by a rope with blood visible on his body. Then, allegedly, another picture showed Caleb lying bruised, face up, on the floor. Now, the photos were then allegedly followed by another text that read, "He won't move. I'm so sorry." A few moments later, another text was sent saying, he's moving. As if that isn't horrific enough, the mother of this allegedly abused child replied to these pictures and texts by writing, "He just looks wore out and tired and hurt. Hopefully that's all." Now, the documents explain that multiple searches have occurred at the home where the family lived, which might explain how investigators believe that little Caleb was zipped into a bag and stored for a short time in a small outbuilding. Investigators had also interviewed Wendy multiple times at the UAB hospital once she regained consciousness. They waited to arrest her until doctors indicated she was well enough for release from the hospital. During those interviews, she allegedly said that after Caleb died, he was, quote, placed into a bag and stored in an outside storage building for a brief period prior to that final disposal. And remember that date I mentioned, September 4th? Well, that was the supposed last time Caleb was seen. Well, the arresting documents indicate that the abuse of a corpse happened on September 29th. Now, Wendy has been charged with that, abuse of a corpse. She has also been charged with aggravated child abuse, first-degree domestic violence, and criminally negligent homicide. Now, let's explain something here. The homicide charge is for the death of Riley. She wasn't restrained in a car seat in the truck, and that's Wendy's responsibility. So she's been charged with the death of Riley. But that leaves us asking, what about the death of Caleb? Well, we don't know. More charges can be added later. And also, maybe investigators have strong evidence that Stephen killed Caleb, and they have no reason to reveal that evidence quite yet, since Stephen's dead and there's no need to justify an arrest of Stephen. More is surely to be revealed in the coming weeks. I'll keep you updated on this case. Now to Georgia, except I feel like I should be saying now to Brooklyn or Boston or Chicago, any city known for mob families and mafia violence. But nope, this one is in Monroe County, Georgia, and 6 men have now been arrested. A very public beatdown by the Buckland family against a competitor allegedly occurred on December 19th, and it all stemmed from the Buckland family having beef with a rival paving company. All right, see, the competitor, EH Paving, had the guts to do work at a home close to one of the Buckland boys' own residences. Police say that disrespectful behavior would not be tolerated by the Buckland boys. So, 6 men, 3 generations worth of the Buckland family, confronted the EH Paving employees working on the job. When an argument ensued, the family patriarch, 77-year-old Mark Buckland, well, he pulled out a, quote, long cowboy-style gun. So like a shotgun or a long-barreled pistol? I don't know. That's how it's been described. And then he allegedly fired 2 rounds into the wooded area near the home, maybe presumably intending to intimidate the employees of EH Paving. I also saw it reported that he might have been trying to get everyone to settle down. Who knows, but he fired his gun into the woods. And somewhere in the melee, 58-year-old Mark Buckland Jr. allegedly sparked a full-on brawl that left the paving employees bruised and beaten. The brawl included Willie Buckland Sr. allegedly whacking the son of EH Paving owners in the head with a bat. So we've got shotguns or pistols and bats, and we have 6 men against 3. Also engaging in the tussle is 22-year-old Will Buckland Jr. and a Buckland son-in-law named James Small. Okay, those 2 jointly started attacking another paving employee. Then 28-year-old Luke Buckland allegedly went after the EH Paving owner's nephew. Okay, you guys, this is truly like the Hatfields and McCoys. And I don't know if you guys are too young for that reference. So maybe it's more like Kanye and Taylor if the 2 singers' camps owned paving companies. Well, all 3 employees of EH Paving were identified in arrest reports as having bruises and welts and scrapes. And 1 employee was checked out at the local hospital after throwing up at the scene. Authorities have charged Mark Buckland Sr. with criminal trespass, tampering with evidence, and pointing a gun at another person. His son was charged with inciting a riot, criminal trespass, and simple battery. And Willie Buckland Sr. was slapped with aggravated assault and criminal trespass. The other 3 Bucklands, well, they were charged with simple battery and criminal trespass. The sheriff of Monroe County described the whole scene as something out of The Sopranos. All 6 have posted bail after spending a couple of days in jail. E.H. Paving's owner told investigators that it's not the first time his business and his employees have been threatened by the Bucklands. He claims he has been tailed by the rival company before, and that some of the men have tried to start fights at other job locations. If you're listening to this just simply on podcast, you really need to head over to social media and check out the mugshots of these 6 men. Who knew paving was such serious business? And I can't believe I'm bringing you this next story out of Louisiana, but here we go. It includes a female teacher, her husband, who is a former sheriff's deputy, and semen-laced cupcakes and energy drinks. And you guys, that's not even the worst of it. Here's what happened. 36-year-old Cynthia Perkins worked at West Side Junior High School, this all since 2016. She had taught at other schools in the Livingston Parish school system prior to her work as an English teacher of 12 to 14-year-old kids. Her husband, back in 2019, was Dennis Perkins, a SWAT commander for the local police force. It was in October of that year that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received a tip about a photo of a woman and a man naked with a minor child. Turns out the adults were Cynthia and Dennis, a teacher and a police officer. Following an investigation, the couple were arrested and charged with hundreds of charges. Most of the charges were connected to sexual crimes with a minor younger than 13 years old. Cynthia faced 72 charges, and Dennis faced 150 charges. The forensic evidence included videos of the pair forcing a young child to engage in both oral sex and intercourse on repeated occasions. Videos were also discovered of Dennis ejaculating onto cupcakes that were later served to Cynthia's students at Westlake Junior High. And then another video also showed sperm being placed into energy drinks that were given to the kids. Well, Cynthia filmed all of that. It seems by reading the charging documents that Cynthia was there for most of the abuse, and she wasn't preventing it from happening, and she was filming it as well. During his arrest, so Dennis's arrest, while he was at a fishing camp, Dennis threw his cell phone over a bridge railing and into the water below. Is this a situation of tell me you're guilty without telling me you're guilty? He told officers the reason he threw the phone into the water was because he had naked pictures of his wife on there and he didn't want them to see the pictures. Well, following their arrests, Dennis was fired from the police force. Cynthia resigned from teaching, and Cynthia and Dennis divorced. Cynthia claimed in the divorce papers that Dennis had manipulated her into participating in the rapes. Well, back in February of 2024, Cynthia took a plea deal. 68 of her charges were dropped, and she then pled guilty to second-degree rape, production of child pornography, and conspiracy of mingling harmful substances. That last one was for the disgusting cupcakes. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Can I get a hallelujah? Because at least this is a sentence that matches the crime. But all of that left Dennis still saying he was taking those 150 criminal charges to trial. That was until this week. See, Cynthia has agreed to testify against Dennis as part of her plea deal. And between that and the video evidence, this trial wasn't looking so good for Dennis. So Dennis on Monday agreed to a deal where he entered a plea of guilty for 1 count of second-degree rape, 2 counts of sexual battery of a child, 1 count of video voyeurism, 2 counts of production of child porn involving children under the age of 13, and then 1 count of mingling of harmful substances. The prosecution stated that the victims agreed to the plea deal because it meant that they would not be required to testify, which ultimately could have possibly traumatized them even more. Dennis was sentenced to 100 years in prison. As he left the courtroom, he said the following: I just want to make this statement. Jesus Christ has forgiven me, and I'm grateful for that. And I hope and pray that anybody that this affected will also find forgiveness and healing through Jesus Christ. Well, one young victim did speak at the sentencing hearing, telling Dennis that he wasn't worth her time. She then said instead of protecting victims, Dennis chose abuse. She finished by telling him to have a nice life in prison. But this isn't the end for Dennis and Cynthia. They also have civil suits that they are facing. One father sued the couple after he ate one of the contaminated cupcakes. He said once he knew what he had eaten, he fell into a debilitating depression that has harmfully affected his employment. Then another lawsuit filed by one of Cynthia's students stated that the cupcake incident has left the child with emotional and mental difficulties, resulting in behavior issues. Another civil suit filed last May alleges that Cynthia showed pornographic images to a student. Then Cynthia photographed and videoed the child. All in all, there's 4 lawsuits that have been filed, and all of the lawsuits name the Livingston Parish School Board as well. The suits cite criminal negligence by the school. Some of the victims are frustrated that Dennis was even allowed to do his line of work in the police force. See, back in 2014, Dennis was investigated following a rape allegation from a Baton Rouge police officer. Those allegations didn't result in charges, and Dennis was allowed to keep his job. So, Dennis has a past that includes allegations, not proof of guilt, and it seems Cynthia has a past as well. In her sentencing hearing back in February, one of Cynthia's children from her first marriage described her as a, quote, horrible and manipulative mother. The child told the court that their life was so much better without Cynthia in it. Now, a third adult has also been implicated in the disgusting actions of Dennis and Cynthia. That woman, Melanie Curtin, was sentenced to life in prison for raping a young child. Dennis and Cynthia had the video of the rape in their possession. The victim in the video told the court that they were all drinking alcohol together when the rape occurred, and Dennis and Cynthia videoed the abuse. Guys, the only good thing about this crime story is that these people will never be able to physically harm a child again. And now to an update on the charges that have been filed against 5 people in the death of singer Liam Payne. Back in October, Liam and his girlfriend, Kate Cassidy, had traveled to Argentina to renew his United States visa. That would require a trip to the embassy in Buenos Aires. They also planned to attend Niall Horan's solo concert called The Show, live on tour. Well, things didn't go quite as planned on the trip. The couple had booked a luxury Airbnb in Buenos Aires, but the securing of his visa took longer than the booked dates of the Airbnb. So Liam and Cassidy moved to the Casa Sur Hotel in Palermo. On October 14th, Cassidy left Liam in Argentina. She had posted a TikTok shortly after returning to Miami saying she had been in Argentina for 2 weeks instead of the planned 5 days, and she was glad to be home. 2 days later, Liam was carried into the hotel through the lobby by 3 people. It appeared that Liam was unconscious or heavily drugged. The hotel manager named Gilda witnessed that Liam was being removed and taken to his room. The hotel manager also told investigators that the 3 people carrying Liam knew that Liam was, at a minimum, by omission, allowing himself to be transferred without the ability to give consent. Now, the hotel receptionist, named Ezekiel, was the person who requested that Liam be transferred to his room. Liam's assistant or friend, maybe both, it depends on the reporting source on how he's identified, but that friend, Roger Norris, went to the room with Liam. Several minutes later, hotel staff were alerted that Liam was trashing the hotel room, toppling heavy items, throwing other items. And police were contacted by the hotel manager, Gilda, and she told them that an aggressive man under the effects of drugs and alcohol was the one committing the destruction. She asked that emergency services hurry because the room had a balcony and she felt that this wasn't safe in this situation. Well, by the time they arrived, Liam had fallen from the balcony. Emergency services said Liam died instantly after suffering a severe head injury in the fall. An Argentine journalist, Paula Varela, said she witnessed CCTV footage, and it appeared to her that Liam fell accidentally after fainting on the balcony, despite many rumors that Liam was pushed from the balcony. Investigators found several medications in the tossed room, including energy drinks, clonazepam, and a whiskey bottle. That one was actually found near his body, almost as if it fell with him. Investigators determined that Liam was alone in the hotel room at the time of his death because Roger, his friend and assistant, Roger had left minutes earlier. Back in October, rumors went wild about Liam and his past drug usage. People were saying that Liam had multiple drugs in his system, like pink cocaine and crack cocaine and benzodiazepines. But the Argentine Public Prosecutor's Office released in November that Liam had traces of alcohol, cocaine, and a prescribed antidepressant in his system at the time of his death. Investigators also clarified those rumors about Liam being potentially pushed. The forensic experts said that the CCTV footage shows that Liam didn't try to stop his fall, or in their words, quote, adopt a reflexive posture to protect himself. They determined that he fell in a state of semi or total unconsciousness. Well, on Monday, the charges against 5 people were released to the public. First, the hotel manager, Gilda. Well, she's been charged with manslaughter for allegedly failing to stop Liam from being taken to his hotel room just a few minutes before his death. Investigators believe it was her job to assess the serious threat of the balcony and that she should have called emergency services immediately. Next was the hotel manager, Ezekiel, who is also charged with manslaughter for allegedly asking the 3 people to drag Liam to his room. And then there's Liam's friend, Roger, who is also charged with manslaughter for allegedly failing to fulfill his duties of care and assistance. Now, this charge centers around Roger abandoning Liam in the hotel room, knowing Liam was incapable of fending for himself. Now, the last 2 people charged are suspected of selling cocaine to Liam, a hotel waiter and then another hotel employee. The sale of that cocaine was suspected to have occurred throughout the 2 days before his death and the day of his death. Now, the judge in the case has pointed out that she does not think that Gilda, Roger, and Ezekiel planned Liam's death, but instead their actions created the possibility for his death. If those 3 are found guilty, they could face anywhere from 1 to 3 years in prison. In Argentina, the sentence for supplying drugs is actually more severe. The 2 employees of the hotel who allegedly sold drugs to Liam, they can face 4 to 15 years in prison if found guilty. Now, the lawyers for the 2 employees are saying that the drugs weren't sold to Liam. They were just consumed with Liam. So they hung out and did cocaine together, but a monetary transaction did not occur. Now, Roger has talked with TMZ since the death of Liam, and he contends that Liam was a, quote, good friend, and that the 2 had spent time together on the day of his death. He said Liam was happy and playful when he left him in that hotel room. This was just before Liam trashed the place and then fell off the balcony in a state of semi or complete unconsciousness. So Roger's saying that Liam went from unconscious in the lobby to happy and playful in his room to angry and destroying things to unconscious again and falling off the balcony. Now, if I'm understanding correctly, this phase of the charges happens pretty quickly in Argentina. The judge has already skipped past the portion of deciding if there's enough evidence to proceed to trial. So as far as the judge is concerned, this is happening. The 5 people accused can appeal the charges. If those appeals are denied, the trial happens right away. And those appeals, it looks like they're supposed to be filed by this Friday. So that's tomorrow. So we're not waiting years here like sometimes cases are in America. I'll let you know how this turns out. Also, let me know in the comments if you believe that this was all just an accident. Now to some of the comments from the last episode. Okay, first, I gave you an update to Richard Allen. That's the Delphi murderer. And I talked about how a retired child advocate broke the case wide open. Well, again, in that update, I had multiple people comment that they don't think Richard Allen is guilty. Now, there's absolutely wrongful convictions. I've covered some of them here on Rise in Crime. I would love to know why you think he is not guilty. Also, can he prove it on appeal? So tell me what you think can get him out of these charges. Let me know, Diamond Papa and Raven and Ruth, because all of you were sounding off that he's not guilty. Then in reference to another case that I covered, so many of you agreed that these abuse cases against children should all be about the kids. If you're an abuser, it doesn't really matter what demographic group you align with, because the important thing is we need to end the abuse of children. Then, in regards to the 9-year-old carjacker from Baltimore who was sent home with his parents without any retribution or charges, you guys didn't like that. Mine Here One said it should have been juvenile detention at a minimum. And Maureen is worried that the parents of the child, well, maybe they're not any better than the child. So how can we expect the behavior to change? All right, that's your Thursday episode of Rise in Crime. Happy New Year. First episode of 2025. I hope this year brings you love and strength and also challenges that we all can turn into triumphs. The challenges are always going to be there. The triumphs are up to us. Thanks so much for joining me for the past year. It's like a year and 3/4 now that we've been doing Rise in Crime. I've got the best listeners. I truly appreciate you joining me on this journey. I love all that you bring to the podcast, the 5-star reviews, the positive and negative comments. They all help us learn. And please, you guys, tell a friend about the podcast. Also, like and follow us on our social media and our YouTube accounts. We have 3 here at Oh No Media. That's Into the Dark, Murder with My Husband, and of course, Rise in Crime. You can join me again on Monday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.